Had to turn on the microphone for the camera, so there was no audio.
That's how we roll.
Some people like me better than.
All right. So Gail is going to do her presentation on Mary, and you wanted to start
Yeah, we
with?
have one video.
Maybe. Why is my screen not disappearing? Stop. Really? Let's change screens. See if it'll change. Okay, now we got technical difficulties. We're stuck.
You might have to do something.
I'm trying. Escape's not letting me come on. Okay, who's, hey, John?
Try control alt delete.
God bless you, Joe, we need you.
That just candy while he's up there. Pass it around.
Oh, magic touch.
That's just me.
Yeah.
No, it's Richard.
Yeah.
Hey.
Man, right touch.
Y'all are welcome.
Thank you.
Mary, did you know that your baby boy would one day walk on water? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would save our sons and daughters? Did you know that your baby boy has come to make you new? This child that you deliver would soon deliver you. Mary, did you know that your baby boy would give sight to a blind man? Oh, Mary, did you know that your baby boy would calm the storm with his hand? Did you know that your baby boy has walked where angels tread? When you kiss your little baby, you kiss the face of God. Oh, Mary, did you know? Oh, Mary, did you the blind will see, the deaf will hear, the dead will live again. The rain will leave, the dumb will speak, the praises of the Lamb. Mary, did you know that your baby boy is Lord of all creation? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would one day rule the nations? Did you know that your baby boy is heaven's perfect lamb? This leaving
I'm just as bad as technology as Richard is. It's not my forte. Mary, did you know that when you kiss your little baby, you kiss the face of God? I think some people, I don't know if anybody's heard this song before, some people might find this song to be a little bit questionable. Some people think it questions our theology. I just find it to be a really good overview, 4-minute overview of Jesus and his Blessed Mother, and our Blessed Mother. I do believe that Mary knew that this child Jesus was not an ordinary child. And as a devout Jew, she would have studied the Old Testament, and we hear in Isaiah 7:14, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The young woman pregnant and about to bear a son shall call him Emmanuel." The Jews were waiting for the Messiah, and of course the angel Gabriel told her, as he recounted in Luke chapter 1, 30 through 33. Then the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. Behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall name him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High, and the Lord God will give him the throne of David his father. So he will rule over the house of Jacob forever, and his kingdom there will have no end." So I truly do believe that Mary knew, she might not have known every single detail, but she knew that the child that she was carrying was going to be a very special child, and probably even that it was the Messiah. I want to just give you a little bit of background on me. I've lived in Kansas City for the past 40 years. I have 2 sons, 2 grandsons, and 1 grand dog who I love dearly. I keep him 2 days a week. I'm a convert, and I came into the church in this very room in 2008. Well, I came into the church in the church, but I went through RCIA right here. I retired from the marketing industry about 2 years ago. It's one of the best things I've ever done in my entire life, is retiring. Yeah. And I'm a trained spiritual mentor for the Archdiocese. I went through a 2-year program, and now I mentor about 4 to 5 women, and I meet with them on a monthly basis, mostly to help them with their prayer life and to draw closer to the sacraments. This is a little bit cut off, I'm not sure why, but the hardest part of my Catholic faith journey was understanding and loving our Blessed Mother. So hopefully what I can share with you tonight will help you answer some of those questions and maybe just push you a little bit further to understanding her. Some of our goals tonight is to present that so that you can understand her, approach her, call on her in prayer, and let her lead you closer to her Son. Many of you might not know or understand Mary. As I said, she wasn't for me about 15 years ago, and her significance was a huge stumbling point for me as I would discern joining the church. But I learned one really valuable lesson. I couldn't love her or accept her if I really didn't know her. For those of us who discover Mary and later in life, she makes her presence known to us, I think, a little bit more silently and a lot more slowly. She might emerge in scripture, music as we saw here. Maybe it's a conversation with a friend, in the rosary, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, and also from the numerous feast days that we celebrate throughout the year. I came to realize she is full of spiritual secrets that we cannot immediately grasp. And I believe as adults, Mary comes to us much more slowly, but patiently, but still full of love as she works to open us up for the love of her Son. So let's talk about the dates and get this in the right order. December 8th, which was last Friday, was the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. On this day, the church celebrates and acknowledges that Mary was perfectly conceived, not Jesus. This is not about Jesus' conception. That Mary was perfectly conceived in her mother's womb so that she would be born without original sin. And this is the original sin of Adam and Eve. 9 months later, on September 8th, is the Nativity of Mary. This is when she was born. On March 25th, we celebrate the Annunciation. And then 9 months later, we celebrate the Nativity of Jesus. Why was Mary immaculately conceived? From the moment of her conception, God preserved Mary from personal sin for her entire life, so that she would be the perfect vessel for her Son, Jesus Christ. This was a gift of grace from Mary, and it was also, we need to realize, a gift of grace for us. From the moment of her existence, she was in this state of grace and free from the corrupt nature that original sin brings. As I said, understanding Mary 15 years ago was extremely difficult. I studied, I asked a lot of questions, but one thing I didn't do about it was pray or ask Jesus to help me grow in a deeper understanding. But about a year later, things changed dramatically for me, and I'll share those in a few minutes. So how did I make the transition? I finally realized I had to change my mindset. I was trying to rationalize Mary. And she's bigger than that. She's not tangible. And I really had to get my mind out of it and put my heart into it. So here's what I learned along the way. I learned I had to surrender to God for all things. And that is one of the most difficult things I will ever do, or if you can do it yourself, that you would be able to do. It takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of humility. I also learned that we can turn to Mary too. She can be my friend. I learned to trust even when things look hopeless, just like Mary did. And through Mary, I learned to love Christ more. As I grew in understanding of her, my heart was opening further to my relationship with Jesus. Here's why Mary's important in our Catholic faith. Mary's yes was the start to God's plan for our salvation. And I think if you remember in the very first class was on salvation history, God tried and tried and tried to make salvation plans, and we as humans just kept messing them up. So his solution, obviously, was to put Christ into our world. This yes is called her fiat, was her agreement to be God's vital request. Because of Mary, the Son of God became human in nature, but he became both true God and true man. And with her yes, Mary became the new Eve and undid Eve's disobedience in the Garden of Eden. Mary's yes to the angel Gabriel and to God reversed Eve's no. You know, God always intended to ask this young Jewish virgin to cooperate in his salvation plan. You'll see so many times as we read in the Old and the New Testament, God chooses commoners, the poor, the downtrodden, the young, widows, to reveal his plan of salvation. And I came to realize, if God could trust Mary, why couldn't I trust Mary too? She's Jesus' mother, and she knows him like we know our own children. And all she wants for us is to love Jesus and to follow him. She is our model for true discipleship. And finally, all Christians are her children. All we're asked to do is to love and honor her, never worship her, or put her before anything that relates to the Holy Trinity. So let's talk a little bit about the history of Mary. For most Christians, it starts with the Christmas story. And this is fairly universal. Mary arrives in Bethlehem. She's very pregnant, and there's no room in the inn. We all know that part of it. She rested in a cave-like stable and was born with all the animals surrounded her and Joseph, just like a commoner. Born without any pomp and circumstance in a very humble surrounding. He was laid in a manger surrounded by the sheep, goats, and lambs, which is hardly an entrance for a king and a Messiah. As a side note, the word manger in Latin means to eat. And I love that parallel with how we're spiritually fed at the Mass. I had a chance to travel to Bethlehem about 5 years ago, and we visited Shepherd's Field. This is not what I was expecting this to look like. I was expecting more of a desert, really flat, kind of like you might see, you know, out in the prairies of Kansas. You can see it as hardly flat. And it's rocky, it's steep, and I was there in January, and it was very, very, very cold. But to look over where the shepherds would have looked to see the Star of Bethlehem, which guided them to the manger, was very inspiring. We also visited Jesus' birthplace, where the Church of the Nativity sits over the top of it. Again, it was not what I imagined, but it was more than I expected. And you can go there and venerate this area where this star is right here. Most would agree that the story of Jesus' birth and the shepherds are synonymous across all Christian faiths. So what do Catholics believe that is so different from any other faith? For Catholics, the story of Mary does not stop there. So just who is Mary? She's our Blessed Mother. She's Mary, Mother of God. She's Mary, Queen of Peace. She's Our Lady of Guadalupe, which we're going to talk a little bit more about in a minute. She's the Queen of Heaven and Earth. Bless you. She's Our Lady of Fatima. She's the Queen of the Most Holy Rosary. She's the Virgin Mary. Another name would be Our Lady of Sorrows, which is my screensaver on my phone. And I just love the way she knows she's feeling all the sorrow in her heart, but look at the serenity that's on her face. It's just absolutely beautiful. But this is where I was getting hung up. How could one woman have so many different names, so many roles in our faith, and still be one person? And not that Google's end all or say all, but we all use Google probably on a daily basis. There's over 150 titles over the past 2,000 years that Mary's been given or has taken. But why does she have so many names? Some titles were given to her to signify the beliefs the church views necessary for our salvation, like Mary, Mother of God, or Mary, Queen of Heaven and Earth. Other titles might depict Mary in art. Other titles grew from geographic and cultural needs, like Our Lady of Fatima in Portugal, Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico, both where Mary appeared. Some titles depict aspects of Mary's role in the life of Jesus, including Our Lady of Sorrows, which we see here, as she realized all the experiences her son would face. Tomorrow is a very special day. December 12th, we'll celebrate the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. I'm going to paraphrase the story because it's a beautiful story, and maybe spend some time tomorrow just looking this up somewhere, use a reputable site, and really understand the background. It's a wonderful story, and there's a lot of people, even in this room, that hold this in one of their highest regards, and it's very popular with our Hispanic community as well. So here, Mary appeared to Juan Diego in Mexico City in 1531 and asked him to build a chapel. The local bishop refused. She appeared again and encouraged Juan Diego to visit the bishop once more. He found every reason in the world, including his uncle being sick, not to go, but he did at Mary's insistence, and as he stood in front of the bishop, roses appeared in his cloak, which Mary had placed there. And it was not the season for roses to bloom in Mexico. Seeing this, the bishop had a change of heart, and the church was built in 2 weeks. The shrine stands today, and it's one of the most visited Catholic shrines in the world. Has anybody here been to Guadalupe, or Mexico, or to Guadalupe, Shrine of Guadalupe? It's on my bucket list. I'm not sure Mexico's the safest country to be visiting right now, though. But no matter what title she takes, her role is very simple and very important. Everything she does, everything she wants, everything she is, points to her son Jesus, never to herself. She is there to lead us to safety and salvation. We are her children, like a mother leads and protects her own children. And she too only wants to lead us to the heart of her son. Many times we turn to her in sadness or despair. Maybe it's a relationship, a health issue, a broken promise, a financial difficulty, some type of loss. But Mary shows us that the real question is not how often or how much we suffer. She is the role model for how we should respond when we're visited by suffering. And with her quiet, surrendered heart, she's able to move us to trust Jesus just a little bit more so that he can work more fully in our life. Mary is my mother. She is your mother. Mary is our mother. Now, she's not trying to replace your biological mother. That's not where we're going. She's our spiritual mother. And I had to learn to open up my heart to her because of her love and devotion to Jesus. And when I did that, some amazing things began to happen. But how did she become our mother? Jesus gave Mary to us, his most precious gift, to be our mother and the mother of the church for all time. From the Gospel of John, chapter 19, verse 25 to 27, we read, standing at the foot of the cross, were his mother his mother's sister, and Mary of Magdala. When Jesus saw his mother, the disciple there whom he loved, he said to his mother, "Mother, behold your son." Then said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her into his home. When Jesus gave Mary to John, he was giving Mary to all of us. The crucified Messiah established a new and everlasting relationship between Mary and Christians. The role started when she gave her consent and her yes to the angel Gabriel, a messenger from God, at the Annunciation. Yes, she would do his will. Yes, she would be obedient. Yes, she would endure the sacrifice of her son for our salvation. Yes, she would accept all of us for all time as her children. Now comes the hard part. I want to share with you my faith journey, which eventually led for me to come to the Catholic Church and how Mary impacted my conversion. Unfortunately, it does start with I was born, but I can promise you we're not going to go through everything. I'm not young. I was born the oldest of 4 children into a very, very devout family in Detroit, Michigan. God and our church was the center of our entire family life, and we went to some type of church gathering at least 4 times a week. All of our friends were from our church community. When I was 11, I came forward, was baptized with my sister, who's 2 years younger than I am. And about 6 months later, my father's job transferred us to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was about a week before Thanksgiving. The first thing was to find a new Baptist church, and my mother took this very seriously. As I look back, everything she did was centered on God, our faith, and our family. She was our spiritual leader of our family. Over the next 4 weeks, we trudged to many, many Baptist churches before my dad and she finally agreed. It had to be the right minister, the right youth environment, the right Bible study, the right women's group, and the right Sunday school. Praise God, we finally found the right everything. We were very happy. 4 days later, on December 18th, my mother was tragically killed in a car accident. Here we were, 5 hours from any family. We had few local friends because we'd only lived there a few weeks, and it was a week before Christmas. My youngest brother, Steve, who was 5 at the time, was with her. Thankfully, he survived and fully recovered from the accident. Needless to say, as a family, we were devastated. Things changed pretty dramatically for me. I went from being a happy 11-year-old girl, learning to ice skate, which is my favorite thing to do, to becoming an adult almost overnight. My dad was able to bring in some domestic help, but my daily routine after school involved doing laundry, cooking, and caring for my 3 younger brothers and sisters. Through all of this, I became very, very, very angry with God. I did not understand how this God who we loved and worshiped every day could take my mother away. I doubted my faith, and I deeply doubted God's love for me or my family. Needless to say, my anger was profound. My dad still tried to keep us close to the church. I would go, but I would just sit there, and I became very spiritually despondent. A year later, we were transferred to Chicago, and a year after that, we moved to St. Louis, where I went to high school. After graduating, I went to Mizzou. My Mizzou girls aren't here tonight, unfortunately. And I met a very wonderful Catholic young man from Northeast Missouri. We fell in love and were married in the Catholic Church 4 years later. While we were dating, we went to Mass pretty frequently, but after we got married, it wasn't long before that fell off. We were both busy, you know the drill. We were traveling for work, climbing the corporate ladder, going out with friends. And as time went by, we only went to Mass on 3 occasions, C, E, and M. Who knows what C is?
Christmas.
Who knows what E is?
Easter.
Who knows what M is?
Mother's Day.
When my mother-in-law was in town. She's a cradle Catholic. Marguerite Christopher, couldn't disappoint her, God love her. We had 2 boys who were baptized into the Catholic faith, but neither of us was really close to any faith. I was still very angry with God, and looking back, I provided no spiritual support for my husband or my family. And I will tell you, choosing not to raise my boys in the Catholic Church is one of the biggest regrets of my entire life. Despite this, we were very happily married. November 2005, my husband became suddenly ill. He was admitted to the hospital with a really severe case of pneumonia. We knew going into it that he was allergic to almost every antibiotic. And this triggered some significant respiratory problems, which resulted in some heart issues. We got on a slippery slope. He developed sepsis and died 12 days later. So here I am, a single mom, 2 teenage boys, not a very good, stable financial situation. But I was sure that this was God's plan for my life, helping a family, my family, through the pain and devastation of a sudden family death, especially around a major holiday. We butted up right up to Thanksgiving. My anger swelled even more, but was I ready to do anything about it? Nope. I was very hard-headed and very stubborn. I knew I could handle this by myself. I'd done it before, and I could do it again. And once again, I felt God had abandoned me. And as you can imagine, the wounds of my mother's death were wide open. In August of 2007, I had some significant changes at work. They were going through a reorganization, and there was a lot of talk that my department was going to be outsourced, and I was pretty sure I was going to lose my job. So now I'm a single mom, 2 teenage boys, one getting ready now to go to college. My job was in jeopardy. My financial situation was no better. And that was it. I was at rock bottom professionally, financially, emotionally, and spiritually. I had nothing left. I was completely empty. I heard someone say that God reaches down to us even when we're at our lowest point. He cares that much, and he reaches that low. And I learned he would lean that low for me. And I know, looking back, that I had nowhere else to turn. It was a Friday night in August of 2007. I just got down on my knees in my bedroom and I prayed like I'd never prayed before. I prayed for forgiveness, for release of my anger, for help, for guidance, and for comfort. Shortly after that, I was working in the kitchen, and I heard this whisper, this insistence, go to Mass, go to Mass, go to Mass. It just would not stop. The next day, I was sitting here in the parking lot on a Saturday evening just before the 5 o'clock Mass. Sure, I could have chosen that great big Baptist church across the street, but I didn't. I think I felt that God maybe had betrayed me. And yes, I know it's the same God. But I felt being in the Catholic Church, even though my husband was a cafeteria Catholic, which means he would just take what he wanted, not what he needed, that would pull me closer to him. I had never gone to Mass before in my life. We were married 25 years. I had never gone to Mass before, by myself. So when Father Mike Hawkins, our previous pastor, he had a homily that night, and this is his exact words. Even in the midst of despair and tragedy, Jesus is calling you. It might not seem like it at the time, but he is. He is not pushing you away. He's calling you to come closer. How many times is he going to call you before you answer him? And then I suddenly realized during all of this despair in my life, Jesus probably wasn't pushing him away. He wasn't punishing me. He was calling me to come closer. I was not listening. So I kept going to Mass, and about 6 weeks later, I entered the RCIA program, received my first communion in March 2008. Like many of you, I had to get my baptismal record, and I called the church in Detroit where I was baptized, who had merged with another church, who had merged with another church, which is pretty typical in the Protestant faith. Finally, I connect with Pastor Terry, and I explained I needed a copy of my baptismal record. He laughed at me. He said, it'll be fine, just go ahead and join that Baptist church, you don't need anything. Then I made my mistake, and you know what it is. I told him I was converting to the Catholic Church, and I really needed the record. We went through the whole litany of, 10 minutes. Those Catholics, they worship idols. Mary's more important. My baptism wouldn't be valid in the Catholic Church, which again, none of this is true. So this went on for a while, and he said he tried to change my mind. I wasn't budging. And he said if he had time, he'd search for my file. I seriously doubted this paperwork would ever come. But about 10 days later, I received a letter in the mail. I was shocked. My husband's birthday was March 23rd. I was baptized in 1969 on March 23rd. I knew it was in the spring, but I didn't know the date. And Easter in 2008, the weekend I came into the church was on March 23rd. As I mentioned after RCIA, one of my biggest challenges was devotion to Mary. Like most of us, I understood her historical importance, but I was still missing her spiritual importance. After all, as a Baptist, really, we went through the story. Mary rides into Bethlehem, gives birth to Jesus, and that's about it. There's no annunciation, and Mary said yes to the angel. There's no visitation when Mary was greeted by her cousin Elizabeth. There's no finding Jesus in the temple, no miracle at the wedding feast of Cana, no mention of her sitting quietly at the foot of the cross. And to a Baptist, she really is not considered queen of heaven and earth. All of these things that I just mentioned are in the Bible. We never once talked about them. I went to Sunday school every Sunday. I went to girls' night every Wednesday night. None of these things about Mary, none of these miracles were ever mentioned in my Baptist faith. I was still frustrated after I left RCIA, came into the church. And as a new Catholic, I knew I was missing something, but as I came to understand, I realized that all the other Protestant faiths are missing everything about Mary. So just before Lent in 2009, I prayed that the Lenten season would draw me closer to Christ through my newfound faith. I also prayed for an understanding and acceptance of our Blessed Mother. Remember, I told you, I had not prayed about this. About a week later, I was invited to attend a Catholic women's retreat here at the parish from a woman that I barely knew. I wasn't supposed to go. I wanted to go. I had a work conflict. I was supposed to be in a conference on the West Coast. I travel a lot. I was in marketing. And that conference got canceled. Conferences in my industry don't ever get canceled. So once again, I really believe the Blessed Mother and the Holy Spirit were working on me. But during the retreat, we prayed the Stations of the Cross through the eyes of Mary. And I want to share with you what I heard on that Friday night in the chapel. From the fourth station we prayed, Jesus meets his mother. As I pushed and shoved to move through the crowd, to be as close to my son as I could, we came to a place in the road where he stopped. He saw me, and we looked into each other's eyes. I didn't want him to see my tears or know my pain, but I long ago accepted how thoroughly he knew me. The love from my heart poured out in the only embrace I could give him. My lips quietly said the prayer he taught us. Father, may your kingdom come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. He nodded so slightly, took a deep breath, and moved on up the hill. The sword passing through my heart had blessed his mission, and I knew he knew it. Thank him with me, even now, that he took up that mission for us. Thank him that he has tasted the separation and loss that every person in the world knows who has lost a loved one. And he has understood the heart of every loving mother who grieves at the suffering of her children. From the 11th station of the cross we prayed, Jesus is nailed to the cross. Today, as I remember him lying on the cross with his arms outstretched, it is the sound of the hammer hitting the nails that stays with me. I remember pulling the first of many wood splinters from his fingers as a child working in Joseph's shop. Again, his precious hands and wrists, which touched and healed so many. A nail was placed and a hammer pounded the nails through his flesh and into the wood of the cross. The sound, the metal against metal, that ring, and the look on his face, the spasm of his whole body, I will never forget. Then the other hand and finally his feet are nailed to the cross. Spend some time with him now, imagining how they lifted him up on the cross, nailed there so that you and I will be free. On the 12th station of the cross we prayed, Jesus dies on the cross. The sword of helplessness split my heart in two as I watched him struggle to breathe, pulling himself up to lift air out of his lungs with incredible courage and compassion. He spoke of mercy and love. There on that cross, he gave me to John and gave me to the Spirit-filled church that would be born on Pentecost. Then after he gave himself into God's hands one last time, he took his last breath and died. It is unforgettable to watch life leave the body of someone you love. At the foot of the cross today, listen to my son. Tell you of his love for you. Speak to him with your heart. And that was it.